Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. At this time, I would like to acknowledge with respect the Onondaga Nation, fire keepers of the Haudenosaunee, the indigenous people on whose ancestral lands Syracuse University now stands. 35 years ago, our university and our community made a promise that so long as this university stands, we would remember. And today, we once again honor and renew that promise. Trying to make sense of and encapsulate the events in Lockerbie and all that has happened since is a near impossible task. But in attempting to do so, I found myself returning to the words of the poet Seamus Heaney in his poem, The Cure at Troy. Heaney's words remind us that human beings suffer, they torture one another. They represent all that we lost on that darkest day in Lockerbie. The lives, the moments, the memories, the futures, and that it was all taken far too soon by an act of devastating hate. That, however, is not the end of Heaney's poem. His words spur us to hope for a great sea change on the far side of revenge, to believe that a further shore is reachable from here. In my experiences with Remembrance, I've come to learn and believe that the lasting legacy of Pan Am 103, our great sea change in the wake of devastation, is what we've gathered here today to do, to remember, and through that, to give support and share it with others, to reach others and to bring them into the fold, and to build communities so that we might achieve higher heights yet. It's a collective action that we've borne witness to, as victims' families bonded together, seeking both support and justice in the wake of their loss, as they held meetings and headed to Washington on the 103rd day after the bombing. We've seen it too in this Remembrance program, in us 35 scholars, in this rose-laying ceremony in Remembrance Week, in our community that has grown every year since, in the hope that remembering will be a part of us all forever. That through our remembering, guided by their memory, we may build hope and a better future for all of us, a tidal wave of justice in the wake of tragedy. I would now like to introduce Auto Tunes, performing It As Well with My Soul.
When peace like a river attendeth my way, when sorrow
In 1988, a terrorist bombing took the lives of 270, including 20-year-old Stephen Russell Burrell. Though young, Stephen was full of life. He was known for being a thoughtful and loyal friend who cared deeply for his family and had a love for travel. On this day, nearly 35 years later, we, the 2023-2024 cohort, stand here promising to look back and act forward. To be a scholar is to know the importance of what occurred on December 21st, so that the memory of those lost may live on forever. I lay this rose in memory of Stephen Russell Burrell and act forward in remembrance of all 270 victims of Pan Am Flight 103.
Kenneth John Bissett, seat 31J. Ken is remembered as an intelligent, creative, and inquisitive person. He was a Cornell student studying abroad through Syracuse University, and his devotion to the arts and interest in a variety of fields, from engineering to communications, highlights his perseverance and curiosity. Ken was also a talented illustrator who enjoyed drawing comic books, so much so that he even wrote a letter to Marvel Comics critiquing their work and suggested the addition of his own characters, Fanson and Ultra Strongman. It is my deepest honor to represent Kenneth John Bissett today as I lay this rose on behalf of him and act forward in the memory of all the victims of Pan Am Flight 103.
Stephen John Boland was an upbeat, kind young man from Nashua, New Hampshire, that lived every day like it was his last. He had a unique, wholehearted chuckle that everyone knew was his. I feel Steve everywhere on this campus. I see him in students majoring in advertising like him and I, who are eager to learn and experience the world. I hear Steve when his favorite band, the Beatles, starts to play in the local cafe. There will always be a sadness in me for Stephen, but there is also a feeling of gratitude and hope to act forward in his legacy and the legacies of the victims of Pan Am 103. I lay this rose on behalf of Stephen Boland and his memory. Live and remember.
Nicole Elise Boulanger was a senior musical theater major at Syracuse University. Described by friends as shy and quiet, she became another person when on stage. Nicole was a wonderful actress, singer, and dancer, and studied voice, dance, and drama during her semester in London. Beyond her theater work, Nicole was talented in drawing, painting, and costume design, and enjoyed writing poetry and prose. I lay this rose and this stone on behalf of Nicole Elise Boulanger, and act forward in memory of all the victims of Pan Am Flight 103.
Terrorism did not win because we remember Timothy Michael Cardwell, seat 37G. Our young warrior's spirit remains eternal. His drive for success would have changed the world. A fearless leader whose talent and selflessness carried with him throughout all his activities. He loved life, his family, his country, and his God, and he strove to be the best, whether he was on stage, behind stage, jumping out of airplanes, or rappelling down a cliff. The United States honored him with a medal. Today I lay this rose in honor of Tim and all victims of Pan Am 103. I promise to act forward because of him.
With a lifelong love for the theater, Theodora Cohen had a passion for the stage. Her soprano voice and charismatic acting were a reflection of her character. Returning home from London Academy of Music and Drama, Theo intended to start an alternative theater group called Ad Lib to address difficult topics like sexual assault. Loving and mean, logical and hysterical, cynical and enthusiastic, Theo was unapologetically herself. It is with great honor that I lay this rose and this stone in the memory of Theodora Cohen and act forward on behalf of all the victims and families of Pan Am Flight 103.
Today we commemorate Gary Colasanti, a truly extraordinary individual. He possessed a remarkable ability to touch the hearts of others, leaving an indelible mark wherever he went. Gary, a cherished brother of Sigma Alpha Epsilon fraternity, was a friend and a beacon of positivity. He held a deep respect for others, a quality that defined him and inspired those around him. His zest for life was reflected through his passions from playing tennis to his unwavering love for adventure. Today, I lay this rose on behalf of Gary Colasanti and in memory of all victims of Pan Am Flight 103. We as a community pay tribute to their enduring legacies.
Scott Marsh Corey is remembered for his willingness to invite opportunity and continually discover new experiences of living. His magnetism brought laughter and joy to strangers and friends alike. Scott describes his time in London as having been the greatest experience of his life, where he was last seen by friends enjoying juggling a soccer ball in Hyde Park. Today we remember Scott and all 270 victims through their example to climb high and climb far. And on the shoulders of hundreds of scholars before this cohort, we act forward, the sky our goal and our aim the star. I lay this rose in Scott's honor and our shared commitment to celebrating life's simple joys.
A woman of considerable artistic and creative talent, Gretchen Joyce Stater was a master's student whose breathtaking art was matched only by her beautiful spirit. Best seen in her painting titled Unfinished Business by her mother, Gretchen's singular outlook on the world inspired the many friends and family she touched. Having been a lover of the film The Sound of Music, Joyce's exuberant and vibrant personality is best epitomized by the lyrics of the film song Edelweiss. Blossom of snow, may you bloom and grow forever. I lay this rose in memory of Gretchen Joyce Stater and act forward on behalf of the memory of her and all the victims of Pan Am 103.
Syracuse captured Shannon's heart from the very beginning. Her scrapbook of her first 2 years at Syracuse reveals her enthusiasm for college life. The pages adorned with mementos and pictures of her and her friends winning Halloween costume contests and having spur-of-the-moment adventures. Shannon continues to touch the hearts of many, including a Lockerbie first responder who found her personal effects, Phil Haig, and his dog Tosh. Standing here today on the 35th anniversary of the tragedy of Pan Am Flight 103, I am fortunate to say she has also touched mine. I lay this rose on behalf of Shannon Davis and act forward in memory of her and all the victims of Pan Am Flight 103.
As an athlete, actor, and student, Turhan is remembered for his smile and balance in life. In his mother's words, Turhan was one of those rare individuals who respected those around him. He accepted people's differences and had a genuine respect for others' opinions and feelings. I want to share his senior quote, which I believe sums him up well. Far better is it to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even through checkered by failure, than to take rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy much nor suffer much, because they live in the gray twilight that knows not victory or defeat. I lay this rose in memory of Turhan Michael Ergin and act forward on behalf of Turhan, his parents, and all the victims of Pan Am 103.
John Patrick Flynn, known by his friends and loved ones as JP, had a vibrant and flourishing life and community at Colgate University. There, JP studied geography, but also had the opportunity to continue pursuing his passion for athletics and touched those around him with his unwavering optimism, leadership, and kindness. His life and legacy represent the very essence of remembrance, an ideal dedicated to fostering unity, compassion, resilience, and action. I lay this rose in memory of JP and act forward in his memory and of all the victims of Pan Am 103.
Pamela Elaine Herbert lit up every room she walked into. Remembered for her generosity and selflessness, her time studying abroad in London led her to aspire to help the homeless. Pam's compassion, optimism, and joyful spirit showed through in everything she did, perhaps most especially in her church's gospel choir. I am inspired by her ability to face every opportunity with strength and courage, and her smile, laughter, prayers, and love live on in those fortunate enough to share her memory. I lay this rose on behalf of Pam and act forward in memory of her and all the victims of Pan Am 103.
Currently, Hunt, one of the victims of the Pan Flight 103 bombing, is remembered not just for the tragic manner in which her life ended, but for the vibrant, passionate spirit she embodied. The brown-eyed intellectual with a unique and distinctive Rochesterian accent had a strong passion for journalism and dedicated her life to public communications. She embarked on the flight with dreams, hopes, and a bright future that would never come to fruition. I lay this rose on behalf of Carolee Hunt and act forward in memory of all victims of Pan Am Flight 103.
Christopher Jones Memorial in Lockerbie, Scotland, recites a line from Robert Burns' poem, For That and a That. The poem describes the true worth of man and how that worth is neither defined by wealth, nor position, nor possession. We remember Christopher and all the victims of Pan Am Flight 103, not because of their accomplishments, where they came from, or how much they came from, but because of who they were and who they still are. On this 35th anniversary, I lay this rose for Christopher Andrew Jones, a man of strength and humility with an overwhelming passion for others.
An effusive poet, she once penned, "Think of me as night snow, that in its turn danced through the silvery orb of the streetlight, then was lost in soft darkness." And that was Julianne. Julianne Frances Kelly was, at her core, a romantic, spinning a web of wizardry before astonished eyes. Though she traveled some distance in life to find her strength and identity, she was one who accepted and loved life for what it was and as it came, through all its peaks and valleys. She too approached life with an outstretched hand for those in need, always caring for her fellow man. To remember Julianne is to approach life with love. I lay this rose in honor and memory of Julianne Frances Kelly, and act forward in memory of all the victims of Pan Am Flight 103.
Wendy Lincoln is remembered for her gentle and genuine kindness, humility, and willingness to help others. An art major, Wendy was always carrying a camera and sought out the beauty in the world. In a letter to her family, a friend said that she always had a kind word or a hug for anyone who needed it. Wendy was always on top of things and ready to help you climb up and join her. To remember Wendy is to see the best in others, uplift your peers, and live authentically. I lay this rose in memory of Wendy Ann Lincoln and act forward on behalf of all of those who loved Wendy and in memory of all the victims of Pan Am 103.
Alex lived with ebullience, selflessness, and a desire to not only make his peers laugh and smile, but to also educate and uplift them. His desire to pursue clinical psychiatry to help those in need of optimism and support was indelible in his academics here at Syracuse University. Leaving us with artwork and humorous photos with friends, family, cats, and in straw hats, Alex lives on through those cherished pieces that bring smiles to our faces today. I lay this rose in memory of Alexander Lowenstein and draw inspiration from his life to move forward with generosity, positivity, and altruism.
Suzanne Marie Miazga's journey was a testament to her unwavering dedication to making a difference in the lives of others. She was a graduate student, earning her master's degree in social work from Syracuse University's College of Human Development. During her time abroad, she worked as a counselor, having this incredible gift of connecting deeply with those battling drug addiction. In a letter sent to her beloved mother while abroad, she said she wanted to, quote, live life and not just exist. Cherishing every single day, she decided time and time again to dedicate her life to uplifting others in need and making this world shine so much brighter. I lay this rose for Suzanne, who showed us the importance of living life to the fullest and all the victims lost from Pan Am Flight 103.
Richard Manetti left an indelible mark on those who had the privilege of knowing him. His presence was marked by his exceptional character and wit. Rick was a diligent journal keeper, approaching his thoughts with thoughtfulness and care, yet he had a playful and jovial side that endeared him to many. While studying abroad, Rick wrote in one of his journal entries, he wrote, "Don't sit back, make the most of everything, do all you can while you can. Life is a one-time deal." As I stand here today to remember Richard Manetti, I reflect on his ideals and the enduring impact he made on his all too brief time with us. In his memory, I lay this rose and this stone as a tribute to his legacy and a reminder to strive for something greater in our own lives.
Anne Lindsay Otenisek, known as Lindsay by family and friends, was exuberant, loyal, and compassionate in the words of her parents. She was a junior at Western Maryland College, interested in educating the deaf, and was actively learning sign language. She was an active volunteer as a special friend with Gallagher Services, supporting disabled individuals. As a disabled woman with a passion for advocacy, Lindsay's work hits close to home. I lay this rose and this stone on behalf of Anne Lindsay Otenisek and act forward in the memory of all of the victims of Pan Am Flight 103.
An accomplished student at 7 universities, a business owner, a book at the Tau Delta, an active member of multiple professional organizations, and a loved husband and father. Honoring his wife's words, "They never die unless they're forgotten," Peter Pierce will always be remembered for his dedication, generosity, and intelligence. I share the birth state of Ohio with Peter, where his architectural work is recognized for its beauty and function. I lay this rose in honor and memory of Peter Pierce, his loved ones, and all lives lost from Pan Am Flight 103.
Frederick Sandy Phillips was without a doubt an embodiment of what it meant to be a proud Syracuse University student. Passionate, outspoken, welcoming, and naturally ready to be a leader. He loved it all: poetry, sports, business, politics, and most importantly, student engagement. Sandy, also known as the Sandman, leaves a legacy in which he wanted us to endure, to persist, to fight, and to never give up. As one of his poems reads, "The blade you carry into the dust and smoke of battle, the field of conquest may cause that long, terrible fall you now face. Pick yourself up." I lay this rose as a reminder that we live out Sandy's legacy by never, ever giving up on ourselves or on each other.
Sarah Susanna Buchanan Phillips was a junior at the University of Colorado who loved poetry, books, and theater. Her loved ones would describe her as bright, dynamic, and friendly. Sarah was the sunshine in every room she entered. Those who knew her knew she brought joy and laughter into every space she was in. We share a love for English and an interest in law, but most importantly, we share a desire to lead a life full of love and smiles. I lay this rose on behalf of Sarah Susanna Buchanan Phillips, her loved ones, and all lives lost in the Pan Am Flight 103.
For those who knew her, she was a passionate, energetic, and creative young woman, described as the person who always said she had time to talk, the vibrant soul who never let anyone be excluded, and the girl who did everything with style. Louise Luann Rogers of Olney, Maryland, daughter of Organ and Ann, sibling of Becky, Ken, Lawton, and Jay, I lay this rose so that we may never forget you.
Thomas Britton Schultz was more than just a student, brother, and son. The impact that he could have had on this world would have profound meaning. His kindness knew no boundaries, and his passion for learning was unquenchable. Though his light was snuffed too early, I stand here before you today to carry on his legacy. I will continue to stay curious and learn as much about everything and anything. I'll return the kindness the world has bestowed upon me tenfold, just as he would have done. I lay this rose on behalf of Thomas Britton Schultz and will act forward in memory of all the victims of Pan Am Flight 103.
For those who knew him, Mark Lawrence Tobin, he is remembered as an eternally optimistic individual with an offbeat sense of humor and high expectations of himself. He was a hard worker and enjoyed sports, both as a participant and a spectator. At the time of his passing, he was studying abroad in London through Syracuse University's Division of International Programs Abroad, being a student at Fordham University. He is remembered today as being genuine and joyful and a best friend by multiple people. I lay this rose and this rock in your honor, your families, and all of the people's lives you touched.
In memory of Cynthia J. Smith, cherished for her boundless passion for helping others, her vibrant friendships, and her unwavering dedication to both youth and focus and the arts. Her exceptional talents led her to Syracuse University, while her caring heart left an enduring legacy. This rose is laid in her memory, a reminder to aspire for greatness in our own lives. May Cynthia J. Smith and all the victims on Pan Am Flight 103 be remembered and never forgotten.
Amy Shapiro was cherished by all as a close friend. She was a diligent photojournalist who captured stunning images for the Daily Orange, wrote beautiful poems for the Vertigo magazine, and served customers with a smile at her local restaurant. No matter where she went, she left a trail of warmth and admiration behind her. Amy was just not passionate about photography, but about people. She was a genuine friend who cared for others. She was the kind of person who would always be there for you. Whenever you would call her name, winter, spring, summer, or fall, she would be there. She was everyone's best friend. Amy, I lay this rose in honor of you, and I promise to act forward along with honoring all victims of Pan Am Flight 103 to help your family and to be a friend just like you.
Alexia shared stories through photographs, sparking joy among her peers and professors, encouraging many to pursue photojournalism. Photography and athletics are part of Alexia's story, establishing a legacy that has reached the hearts and minds of her family, friends, colleagues, and university, while encouraging the use of visual storytelling as a medium to promote a better tomorrow. I lay this rose in memory of Alexia Catherine Tazares and act forward on behalf of all of those who loved her, and in memory of all of the victims of Pan Am Flight 103.
Nicholas Andreas Frenios had such enthusiasm for life. He was a photography student who went to London with his 3 prized possessions: a camera, a guitar, and a skateboard. Nicholas could perfectly paint a picture of his own thoughts that so many can relate to. His favorite expression was "go for it," because he wanted everyone to do what they loved. Nicholas has inspired me to treasure every moment, smile even when times get tough, to be present and be where my feet are. I lay this rose and this stone on behalf of Nicholas Andreas Frenios and act forward in memory of all victims of Pan Am Flight 103.
Kasia Whedon dedicated herself to the community. Kasia pursued a degree in sociology at the School of Social Work. She volunteered in daycare center, and when she had the opportunity to study abroad in London, she continued her mission by assisting the immigrant children. Kasia's generous spirit was admired by all who knew her. We come together to honor Kasia's dedication and her love for life. Kasia, I lay this rose in memory of you and act forward in memory of all victims in Pan Am Flight 103.
Miriam Luby Wolfe had a passion for the arts, including dance, theater, voice, art, and literature, and I think that would have made us fast friends. Remembering Miriam and all the victims of Pan Am Flight 103 hits especially close to home for me. 2 years before I was born, my older brother Nicholas was stillborn. Through the grief of losing their first child, my parents formed a nonprofit organization to help families across the U.S. through the loss of a stillborn child. Growing up, I spent a weekend every October at their memorial event where hundreds of families came together to remember their children. Just like Miriam, my older brother left behind a gift that continues to touch so many. Let us look back on Miriam's creativity in the arts, her wisdom beyond her years, and her ferocious support for friends and family, and act forward with what we can learn from her. I lay this rose in memory of Miriam Luby Wolfe and all 270 victims of Pan Am Flight 103.
I'm incredibly honored to be representing the 208 other passengers who died during this mass tragedy. These were parents, children, siblings, and friends. They were vibrant and beautiful parts of their communities, and their losses touched thousands. I lay this rose to symbolize their lives lost, but I lay this stone to represent that their lives live on eternally in our memories. Let us all act forward on their behalfs.
This year, I have the honor of representing the 16 flight crew members of Pan Am 103, who came from across 10 countries and who collectively had spent more than 179 years in service with Pan Am. As I lay this rose for the flight crew, I would like to ask each one of you, as you go about your day, to home or to work or to school, to consider the small joys of your everyday life and to bloom like the flowers for your time in the sun.
Following the bombing of Pan Am 103, Syracuse University formed an enduring relationship with Lockerbie, Scotland. To memorialize this relationship, 2 Lockerbie scholars are chosen annually to study at Syracuse University. This year's scholars are Joshua Halliday and Tristan Woolley. At this time, they would like to share a few words.
Hi, I'm Tristan Woolley, and as one of this year's Lockerbie Scholars, I'd like to thank you all for attending this ceremony. When I was told that I was selected to come to Syracuse University, I was so excited and happy. However, I understood the importance of what I was chosen to represent, and that was the people of Lockerbie. The way that the small community came together in a dark time to help in any way possible. The bond between the places brought together in a tragic moment. To look back and act forward. I am one of many Remembrance and Lockerbie scholars who are tasked with remembering the past and honouring the names and lives of those lost. One such individual, Andrew McClune, was a vibrant young man who lost his life while serving as a Lockerbie scholar at Syracuse University 21 years ago. Andrew's passion for curling led to the founding of the Syracuse University curling team in 2002. He is remembered as a friendly and determined individual who consistently gave his best in every endeavour. I have chosen to represent Andrew McClune because I was deeply moved by his impact on Syracuse University and the indelible mark he left on both this community and Lockerbie. Although I never had the privilege of meeting him, Andrew and his family remain forever in our hearts, serving as a shining example of the positive change one can bring to multiple communities. Remembrance for me isn't just a one-week-a-year event. It's something that I think of all the time. For a tragedy as impactful as it was, not enough people are aware of what happened, or they aren't aware of the extent of the tragedy and what it meant for Lockerbie, Syracuse University, and so many other communities. They don't know how the women of Lockerbie banded together to clean, iron, and fold all of the victims' laundry from the crash and send it back to the families of the victims. Or how 2 communities banded together in a time of shared grief to help in any way possible. It falls to us who understand the depth of what happened to educate those who don't, to ensure that memory endures and is never forgotten. May the tragedy of Pan Am Flight 103 be a reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of unity in times of darkness. Let us stand together today and act forward forever to create a future that upholds the ideals of peace, compassion, and resilience. In honour of Andrew McLuhan, I lay this rose.
I stand before you today as a Lockerbie Remembrance Scholar, a title that I hold much pride in. Lockerbie has always been a huge part of my identity, not only since it is where I am from, but also because of the pride I have in my town due to how it has recovered from such a devastating event that most would not even be able to fathom. Lockerbie, my home, a quiet and peaceful town, was forever changed on the fateful night of the 21st of December 1988 by a senseless act of terrorism. The loss of 11 innocent lives in my community is a wound that can never fully heal. Today, we remember those who we lost, but not as mere statistics, as individuals with dreams, aspirations, and each with unlimited potential to make a positive impact in the world. This applies not only to the 11 Lockerbie residents, but to all 270 people who passed away that night, including 35 Syracuse students, who were all part of an Orange family, one that I have been welcomed into. But through this, Syracuse and Lockerbie have shown the essence of indomitable human spirit and made true light out of this situation through the Lockerbie Remembrance Scholarship, which has allowed 70 Lockerbie students to spend a year at this incredible university over the span of the last 35 years, experiencing a whole new country, meeting lifelong friends, and being given the chance to educate countless people on the Pan Am 103 flight disaster. This is our resilient story, the story of how even in times of darkness, two communities who are thousands of miles apart found a way to prosper together. The Lockerbie 11 is the name given to the 11 Lockerbie residents who passed away on the night of the 21st of December 1988. I chose to represent these people because I feel a very, very strong connection to them. I walked the same streets as they did, played in the same park as a child, and went to the same school as many of them. Just these small things allow me to familiarise myself with them. They were all innocent people, brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, and neighbours, who were more than likely excited for Christmas to come around. It never did. I remember when I was young, I used to ask myself, what happened to the presents from Santa that were for the boys and girls? This just shows how oblivious I was to the extent of the tragedy as a child. However, I have always paid thought to this event. But now, as I have grown, I've begun to educate myself more. I ask why this happened, and most importantly, what can we do to stop things like this ever happening again? How can we look back and act forward? I lay this rose in memory of Maurice Henry, Dora Henry, Jack Somerville, Rosalind Somerville, Paul Somerville, Lindsay Somerville, Kathleen Flanagan, Thomas Flanagan, Joanne Flanagan, Mary Lancaster, and Jean Murray. Your memory will never be forgotten.
In observance of Jewish custom, recognizing that several of the victims and current-day scholars were and are Jewish, Remembrance Scholars have the option of placing a stone alongside a rose. Stones were painted at a community event hosted by Remembrance Scholars earlier this week. If anyone would like to lay a flower, a stone, or both in memory of the victims, please come forward and do so now as Avery Head Place Flower of Scotland. Dr. Ruth Chen, Vice Chancellor and Provost Dr. Gretchen Ritter, and Dean David Seaman will begin the laying of flowers and stones. Please take a carnation or stone if you would like to. We will now have closing remarks by Catholic Chaplain Father Jerry Waterman.
Thank you, Otto. Countries of our world are at war. Violence and hate crimes are being perpetrated daily in many cities of our own world and of our own country. We are in need of a peace that the world cannot give. I would like to offer for our quiet reflection today one quote about peace from each of the three Abrahamic faith traditions. From the Hebrew Scriptures, Psalm 29, verse 11. The Lord gives strength to his people, and the Lord blesses his people with peace. From the sacred scripture of Islam, from the Quran, 10, verse 25. And God invites all to the home of peace and guides whoever he wills to the straight path. From the Christian scriptures, Romans 12, verse 18. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. And now I would like to close with what might be a familiar prayer to some, the peace prayer of St. Francis of Assisi, which makes clear that peace must begin with ourselves. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned. And it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Thank you for joining us today and remembering and honoring the 270 individuals aboard Pan Am Flight 103 and all others lost to acts of terrorism. We invite you to join us in Hendricks Chapel for the Remembrance Convocation, which will begin at 3 p.m.
Good afternoon. Please be seated. I would like to welcome everyone to the Remembrance Convocation and remind everyone to please silence or turn off your cell phones. At this time, I would like to acknowledge with respect the Onondaga Nation, firekeepers of the Haudenosaunee, the indigenous people on whose ancestral land Syracuse University now stands. I'm Lois Agnew, Associate Provost for Academic Programs and Professor of Writing and Rhetoric. It is my great pleasure to act as host and MC for this convocation, honoring the 2023-24 class of Remembrance and Lockerbie Scholars, who embody the leadership qualities, community spirit, and academic achievements that mark the very best of Syracuse University students. The phrase "look back and act forward" reflects Syracuse University's commitment to honor and learn from history, with full recognition that to do so engages us with a complicated world too often marked by hate, tragedy, and loss, but also redeemed by joy, kindness, inspiration, and hope. The Remembrance Scholar program not only expresses our community's respect for the past and for each individual who has made us the community we are, but also informs the pursuit of our ambitious vision for the future. This is a moment when we come together to remember those who have passed, to recognize those who are here to work toward a better world, and to contemplate what that world might look like. I would now like to welcome the families and loved ones of the victims of Pan Am Flight 103 and the Remembrance and Lockerbie Scholars. I welcome members of the Board of Trustees, both in person and via the live stream, members of the Remembrance Scholar Selection Committee, and representatives of the Department of Justice and Federal Bureau of Investigation, as well as representatives from the Scotland Crown Office, Office of the Solicitor General, and members of Parliament. I'm joined on stage today by Vice Chancellor, Provost, and Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Gretchen Ritter, and Dean of the Hendricks Chapel, Brian Conkle. On behalf of the Platform Party and the Remembrance and Lockerbie Scholars Program, we acknowledge the support of all of our donors, particularly Board of Trustees Chairman Emeritus Richard Thompson and his wife Jean, Board of Trustees Chairman Emeritus Stephen Barnes and his wife Deborah, and the Syracuse Association of Zeta Psi, who support Remembrance as major donors. A list of generous donors to the Remembrance Scholarship Fund can be found in your program. At this time, I would like to ask Dean Brian Conkle to the podium to give the invocation. Please rise if you're able.
Please join me. What do we do? What do we do with all that we feel? What do we do with the sadness that surrounds us? What do we do with hopes that hold us? What do we do with fears that we face? What do we do with faith we embrace? What do we do with anger that surrounds us? What do we do with care that confronts us? What do we do with the silence that speaks to us? What do we do with the good now sought from us? What do we do with the beauty and the brokenness, the kindness and the cruelty, the unity, division, progress, regress? What do we do with the truth we perceive? What do we do with the grace given and the grace received? Today we remember. Together we remember it all. Amen.
You may be seated. Thank you, Dean Conkle. I would now like to welcome to the stage a special guest from Scotland, David Mundell. Mr. Mundell served as Secretary of State for Scotland from 2015 to 2019 and is currently the Member of Parliament for Dumfriesshire, Clydesdale, and Tweeddale. Excuse me.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great honour for me to speak at today's Remembrance Convocation in this, the 35th anniversary year of the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 over Lockerbie on the night of the 21st of December 1988. I'm incredibly proud to have grown up in Lockerbie, to be a former pupil of Lockerbie Academy, just like our Lockerbie Syracuse Scholars. And it's where I started my political career as a local government councillor in the 1980s. And I'm deeply honoured to have been the town's MP for the past 18 years. I'm also pleased to bring with me today the well wishes of the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. I know that you are very much in his thoughts and those of the many friends you have in Lockerbie, in Scotland, across the UK, and beyond. I specifically recognise the poignancy of this anniversary, given 35 students from this university perished that night. However, in all the years between, they have not been forgotten or their memory dimmed because of the enduring love of family and friends and the commitment of this university through the Remembrance Scholar programme and the Lockerbie Academy Scholarship, which brings 2 students from our town to Syracuse each year. This week, again, we witnessed this year's remarkable scholars and the way they bring to life the students they have studied. I've witnessed today's rose-laying ceremony on a number of occasions, and it never fails to move me, particularly the emotional connections the scholars always manage to achieve with their student. And each year brings some new and heartfelt perspective to that student. So a heartfelt thank you to all the Remembrance Scholars today and over the last 35 years for giving so much of yourselves to the memory of your predecessors. I had the pleasure of meeting some scholars when the Hendricks Chapel Choir and the Wind Ensemble visited the Lockerbie area earlier this year. The choir took part in a very moving service and recital at Tundergarth Church, and the Wind Ensemble performed to great acclaim from the audience in Lockerbie Town Hall. Those present were particularly touched by the pieces that had been specially composed for this anniversary and which we hear again today. Many people, particularly in Lockerbie itself, struggle to find positives that have come from that dreadful night in 1988. But the relationship that has developed with Syracuse University is most certainly one of them. The somber reflection, but also the joy that the choir and the ensemble brought to all that witnessed their performances that day is evidence of it. As was the opening last month of a permanent exhibition in the library of Lockerbie Academy of photographs by your Emeritus Professor Larry Mason. Larry, who taught a number of the students remembered today, has developed a deep connection with Lockerbie and has visited on many occasions. In that time, he has taken a number of stunning photographs of the local area, many from a unique perspective that those of us who have grown up in Lockerbie and lived most of our lives there have never previously appreciated, and we thank him sincerely for that. I should say that I was particularly delighted to see Larry's exhibition go ahead after my own efforts a number of years ago failed when I couldn't persuade the dog training group to move their weekly session at the Lockerbie Town Hall. But then again, the backbone of small communities comes from the strength of its local organisations. We also enjoyed last month the annual visit by Becca Farnham and a group of students from the London campus. And despite the inevitable soaking on their hike in the hills, courtesy of Scottish weather, the vibrancy and enthusiasm and outward-looking perspective these young people demonstrate to all they meet, while taking a genuine interest in Lockerbie and the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103, was truly uplifting. I even learned the best shows to go and see in London, of course, if I had any time. And of course, we have now over 50 young people who have come from Lockerbie on a scholarship to Syracuse University. For all of them, as they themselves say, it has been a life-changing experience. And I'm sure that that will be the same for Joshua and Tristan, this year's scholars. It's the most tangible evidence of that link between our communities, but it's not the only one. Many individual friendships and contacts have formed and developed over the years between many of the families and friends of all the victims and people in our local community. That's why I very much welcome the fact that Remembrance Week's events are attended by so many families and friends of all those who lost their lives in the bombing, but prior to 1988 had no link to this university. My son Oliver, who is the member of the Scottish Parliament for Lockerbie, and I have the greatest admiration for the strength, resolve and dignity of the families and friends over the years. For everyone involved, whether back in Scotland, here or around the world, not only have they had to cope with the horror of the bombing of Flight 103 itself, but living with an aftermath that continues 35 years on and is back in the spotlight again with a further trial. However, whatever happens in the future, or indeed whatever has happened over the last 35 years, it is right that our focus today and on the 21st of December this year will be on those whose lives were so cruelly taken, to honour their memory and assure their families and loved ones that they remain in our hearts, in our thoughts and our prayers, and that they will never be forgotten. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Mundell. I'd now like to call 2023-24 Lockerbie Scholars Joshua Halliday and Tristan Woolley to the stage. The Lockerbie Scholars are selected each year through a rigorous application process by a panel consisting of members of the Lockerbie Trust and 4 members of Syracuse University's faculty and staff. They will study at Syracuse University for 1 year before returning home to complete their studies. We're pleased that Joshua and Tristan have joined the university community, and it is my pleasure to present each of them with a small token from the university.
Thanks.
Thank you to the Hendricks Chapel Choir under the direction of Jose Pepe Calvar and organist Ivan Bosner. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce the Vice Chancellor, Provost, and Chief Academic Officer of Syracuse University, Dr. Gretchen Ritter.
Thank you, Lois, and good afternoon, everyone. On behalf of Syracuse University, I welcome our special guests and all those gathered here for this service. Today, we recognize this year's Remembrance Scholars and Lockerbie Scholars, and we honor the memory of the 35 Syracuse University students and 11 Lockerbie residents who were lost on December 21st, 1988. Some of you in this audience today were here when the news of that tragedy began rippling across campus, first in confused whispers among friends and colleagues, and then in headlines screaming from the front pages of newspapers around the world. On that December night, and in the days and years that followed, we were joined in grief. 35 years later, though some measure of that grief remains and will always remain, we are joined in hope. In that it is truly remarkable to witness the hope that has grown out of tragedy, that Syracuse, together with Lockerbie, found a way forward, that we faced one of our darkest moments and found light. I am reminded of the words of 19th century orator Robert Ingersoll, delivered in eulogy to his brother. In the night of death, hope sees a star, and listening, love can hear the rustle of a wing. To the Remembrance Scholars and Lockerbie Scholars, whom we celebrate this afternoon, I say, you are the embodiment of that hope. Syracuse University Remembrance Scholars now number in the thousands. You have the privilege and great responsibility of representing the future while honoring the past. Our Lockerbie Scholars are 2 of 68 Scottish students who have studied at Syracuse since the program began. Your presence on this campus and the lasting ties to the university that you and your predecessors share help strengthen the connection between Syracuse and Lockerbie. It's an incredibly meaningful connection. It's a connection born out of tragedy, but ultimately defined by caring and kindness. Early on, stories about the people of Lockerbie reached our campus, even as they reckoned with the horrible reality of what had happened to their town, to their friends, to their neighbors. Even then, the people of Lockerbie acted with kindness and compassion. They tended to the victims. They thought of the victim's family. They did whatever they could to try, in some small way, to mitigate grief. 35 years later, the Syracuse community has not forgotten that. That tragedy, that grief, but also that caring and kindness brought us here today. Over the years, the Remembrance and Lockerbie Scholars have had a far-reaching and positive impact on the world as activists and artists, teachers and storytellers, healthcare workers and lawmakers, and also as sons and daughters, as parents and spouses, as colleagues and friends. They are part of the legacy of caring and compassion. To this year's scholars, I say, you are part of that legacy now. You represent the best of us. You represent a hope for the future that may at first have seemed impossible, but for the small acts of caring and kindness that were woven into this story from the very beginning. And in this moment, when our world is once again bearing witness to tragedy, violence, and loss, we find comfort in the hope that you represent. You represent the remarkable ability of women and men to find light in dark places. We saw it in Lockerbie, we saw it in Syracuse, we see it today, regardless of what the headlines tell us. Like I said earlier, it's both a great responsibility and a great privilege. Don't forget that. Take that with you, not just this year, but in the years to come, not just as Remembrance Scholars or Lockerbie Scholars, but as engaged global citizens. Thank you for helping all of us to find light in dark places.
Thank you, Provost Ritter. Now I would like to introduce the Remembrance Scholar speaker. By tradition, the Remembrance Scholar speaker's name is not published in the program because this student represents all 35 scholars. This year's Remembrance Scholar speaker is Hannah Starori-Pensky. Hannah is a political science major in the Maxwell School of Citizenship and Public Affairs and the Renee Crown University Honors Program. Hannah?
Good afternoon. My name is Hannah Starori-Pensky, and it is an incredible honor to stand before you today to represent my cohort. This group of individuals is so special. Coming together from all different walks of life, our cohort has worked tirelessly to honor, remember, and carry on the legacy of the victims of Pan Am Flight 103. I am so grateful to be able to look back and act forward alongside them. Last September, while studying abroad in London, I had the privilege of traveling to Lockerbie, Scotland. The residents welcomed us with open arms and open hearts, eager to share their stories, experiences, and love. While in Lockerbie, our group visited several of the Pan Am crash sites. For me, the most impactful of those was an open field in Tundergarth, where the nose of the plane came down. Across from the field is a church. Next to the church is a watch room, which has been refurbished as a memorial for all the victims of Pan Am 103. In the room is a guest book filled with entries from friends and families of the victims, Syracuse students, and countless others who visited to pay their respects. As I read through the many pages, I noticed a pattern. Scattered throughout the book were entries from Carrie Foley, the sister of William McAllister, a man who passed away in the bombing. Carrie returns once a year to write a note to her older brother. Beginning in the early 2000s, the notes were suddenly accompanied by the traced handprint of a small child, her daughter, and William's niece, Marissa. With each passing year, the handprint grew larger. In 2021, the most recent entry when I saw the book, Marissa was 15. In her entry, Carrie wrote, "What can I say? We miss you every day. So wish you were here with us." She talked about her daughter's similarities to her brother and finished her note with, "Just wish you were here to share all of this with you. We didn't get long together and you were taken away. Please look after Mom and Dad. Love you lots." I'd like to think of Marissa's growing handprint as a symbol of grief. When someone we love passes, grief stems from the loss. Like the growing handprint of a child, it grows bigger and bigger, all-consuming and suffocating. Senseless tragedy can make one's world devoid of all meaning. Grief can often feel paralyzing, filling you with the belief that the world is full of hate and suffering. But similar to a handprint, there comes a time when grief becomes a constant. Once you reach a certain age, the size of your hand does not change. At a certain time, grief becomes something that you carry with you, but rather than suffocating you, it's holding your hand, pushing and guiding you forward. Grief serves as a reminder of those we lost, of the abundant and never-ending love we hold for that person. But what can we do with that never-fading feeling? It is true that there is cruelty and evil in this world. Despite this truth, I have a deep faith and belief in the power of good and the possibility for something beautiful to come from something profoundly tragic. I believe that this program is evidence of that. I believe in the beauty of the friendships and relationships that continue to be created in the aftermath of this tragedy. I believe in the beauty of a woman in Lockerbie honoring 2 Syracuse victims every year on their shared birthday. I believe in the beauty of a community coming together every year in this very chapel to honor victims. I believe in the beauty of collective action, of friends and families taking to the streets and protesting for a safer world. I hope that for another 35 years, and many more, there is still beauty in the grief connected with this tragedy. In January of 1989, over a decade before this year's Remembrance Scholars were born, Chancellor Melvin Eggers addressed the Syracuse community and families of the students killed in the bombing. He vowed that their sons and daughters will be remembered at Syracuse University so long as any of us shall live and so long as the university shall stand. I am proud to say that we have stayed true to that promise. There is a deep and palpable power in tradition and in turning grief into a tool for change. From traditions as personal as Carrie's annual visit to Lockerbie to trace Marissa's hand, to as big and public as the yearly ceremony in Arlington, Virginia, there are countless ways to thoughtfully honor victims and their legacies. I do not know Carrie, nor Marissa, but I now know William McAllister through the act of tradition. Through the continuity of tradition, the Remembrance community has created so much progress. For these last 35 years, scholars, families, friends, and citizens have worked tirelessly to remember and achieve justice for the victims. Each of us has an obligation to continue that mission. On this momentous anniversary, we are all faced with a choice. The act of remembering is not simple or easy. It is not enough to wear a pin or lay a rose. The act of remembering requires hard work, difficult work, to take action and make the world a better place, a place that is better than it was in 1988. We are all part of something so much bigger than ourselves. This is a community and an effort that has been passed down and will continue to be passed down through generations. We must honor those that came before us to continue this work. I know that William McAllister can count on Marissa to carry his legacy. Where will we leave our handprint in the world? Whose legacy can we touch? Where will we create beauty among the grief? Similar to traditions, no act of remembrance is too big or too small. Leaving a mark on the Remembrance community can take many different shapes or forms. For some, remembering might be private and personal. For others, remembering means publicly demanding action and change. There is no singular correct way for us to act forward. As we conclude Remembrance Week, I would like to challenge every one of us to continue to actively remember not only the students that Syracuse lost 35 years ago, but all 270 victims. This community is tight-knit, willing to lean on one another, learn from each other, and grow together. This community, and every one of us, is capable of initiating and creating incredible change. I know that all of us will leave our handprints on the world. We, as a collective, can continue to turn grief into something beautiful, and I look forward to working with all of you to do so. Thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. The Remembrance Scholarships were established by Syracuse University to honor and remember the 270 men, women, and children killed in the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103, especially the 35 Syracuse University study abroad students who were among them. The scholarships are awarded to distinguished senior-level undergraduate students on the basis of their academic achievement and civic engagement. The names of this year's Remembrance Scholar Selection Committee are listed in the program. This year marks the 35th anniversary of the bombing and the 34th year that Syracuse University has honored Remembrance and Lockerbie scholars. Many Remembrance and Lockerbie Scholar alumni have joined us today. Counting this year's cohort, there are now 1,190 Remembrance Scholars and 68 Lockerbie Scholars who embody the motto of the program, look back, act forward. The names of previous Remembrance and Lockerbie Scholars are also listed in the program. I will now be joined by Ken Jones, the father of Syracuse University student and Pan Am 103 victim Christopher Jones, and his wife Jean Jones. A junior majoring in English and history, Chris, fondly known as Shrub, had a love for writing and sports. He had spent the fall 1988 semester studying abroad at Syracuse University's London Center. Mr. and Mrs. Jones will present commemorative pins to the Remembrance Scholars. Will the Remembrance Scholars please come forward? And we ask that you please hold your applause until all the scholars have been recognized. Nicole Aponte. Christian Bevilacqua. Nina Chen. Dominic Chapone. Sophie Krieger Roberts. Daniela Dorado. Mia Fields. Gerdina Gellin. Allison Gilmore. Miguel Guzman. Kai E. Benjamin Johnson. Kyle Kalmar. Beiju Lee. Lucio Maffei. Grant Maxheimer. Mitchell Maza. Aiden McGorry. Giovanni Mosca. Aidan O'Connell. Represented by Anna Janelli. Motalani Olatidan. Sofia Rodriguez. Emily Sod. Katerina Sacco. Elliot Salas. Mary Sheeman. Emily Schumann. Hannah Skelton. Hannah Starori-Pensky. Otto Sutton. Anna Trezargi. Madison Wallace. Emily Weaver. Shibo Shu. Alita Zhang, represented by Caroline Ridge. Please join me in a round of applause recognizing the 2023-24 Remembrance Scholars. And thank you again, Mr. and Mrs. Jones. At this time, I'm pleased to introduce Bradley Ethington, Professor of Applied Music and Performance in the Setnor School of Music.
Angels Rising was commissioned by Dr. Milton Laufer and the Setnor School of Music for the Syracuse University Wind Ensemble to commemorate the lives lost in the bombing of Pan Am Flight 103 35 years ago, which included 35 Syracuse University students. Dr. Frank Tikeli, professor of composition at the University of Southern California, and one of the most prominent composers of music for wind ensemble in the world today, composed a deeply moving tribute to the memories of those whose lives were lost on that tragic day in 1988. It is a work of sorrow and of hope, a transcendent musical portrayal of the human condition and the beauty and fragility of life itself. This remarkable work will be forever associated with Syracuse University as it is performed around the world in the years to come. This is Angels Rising by Dr. Frank Tikeli.
concludes the Remembrance Scholar Convocation. Please join us for a reception in the Syracuse University Art Museum Gallery in the Schaefer Art Building. Thank you so much for being here and sharing this convocation with us. Have a wonderful afternoon.